It is a committee of the whole. It is Tuesday, October 15th. It's 5:30. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Orth?
Here.
Trustee Whitaker?
Here.
Trustee Fowler?
Here.
Trustee Mendrick? Here. Trustee Gallen?
Here.
Trustee Dunges?
Here.
Thank you. At every meeting, we have an opportunity for the public to address the trustees. Does anybody wish to speak? Pam, please approach. Just pull it towards you a little bit. Pam, could you just pull it towards you a little bit just to make sure we're getting the audio?
Speak louder.
Am I good? Okay. Good evening. My name is Pamela Hap.
We don't have any audio.
Yeah. Sorry, Pam. Sorry, Pam. Hang on one second.
Is on. Hello.
That's it.
All right. Good evening. My name is Pamela Papadatos. As you all know, there's a referendum on the November ballot to vote no for the proposed roundabout. I wanted to clarify the reason I started this process was in response to a conversation with then acting village manager Tim Frenzer. Tim believed the village residents were aware of the proposed roundabout and the removal of approximately 20 parking spots. It became clear to me after speaking with many residents that there was a lack of transparency and/or communication. During the September 11th meeting, Tara Orban from Cook County and Jared from Patrick Engineer referenced the value of the input provided from the steering committee. I personally reached out to many of these members. The narrative was consistent. They were not in favor of the roundabout and were either unaware of the proposed parking reduction or how significant the number was. One listed business owner knew nothing about a steering committee. Of course, as I have stated in the past, the fact that I was never asked to be on this committee was very concerning, considering I would be, excuse me, most affected. I believe the current FOIA reports have proven that there's not a safety concern at the intersection of Hap, Orchard, and Walnut Street that would warrant such extreme changes. Removing approximately 20 prime parking spots that currently generate close to $6 million in revenue is not in a town's best interest, let alone a small town that is already parking challenged. The idea to continue to pursue the IDOT property, which started over 20 years ago, is not a viable option or alternative for the present concerns. I do understand that the process of working with the government may be a lengthy one, and some of the information regarding the Hap Road Improvement Project was gathered many years ago. The least this village can do is be more transparent with the information they provide the residents. It's misleading to post crash studies from 2010 through 2016. It's time to update the information provided to the residents. They deserve at least this. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier in my speech, I spoke with many people from the steering committee. One such member, who also served as a trustee, spent 45 minutes on the phone with me. She reached out to Patrick, our manager, as she was familiar with him from Kenilworth. I received a call back from her the next day after her conversation with him. She felt that Patrick had some great ideas. She advised me to be patient. She also stated, quote, and Patrick, I put this on a separate page unless you want to save it. Patrick can move mountains and make miracles happen. That was her quote.
Oh, no.
If you want it, I have it on a separate page. I will end this by saying, Patrick, I have been patiently waiting for this moment for your update from Cook County and Patrick Engineering. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pam. Anybody else like to address the trustees? Please. Well, I caught Kathy's. Go ahead, Kathy. Go ahead, Kathy.
Kathy Estabrook, 1620 Mount Pleasant. I'd like to read an email I sent to the V group, just so everyone knows what I said. Sure. It's been 8 years since this project was revisited. It's time we take a look at it. I believe the whole proposal is a bit overkill. Here are my thoughts for a very workable option. I believe it causes the least amount of disruption, yet accomplishes all the necessities. It is less confusing, pedestrian-friendly, business-friendly, and aesthetically pleasing. 1, replace the water main. 2, reduce the speed limit to 25. 3, outfit the crosswalks with push-button access at Hap and Orchard and at the park. No need for a center lane on Hap from Winnetka. Install sidewalks and lighting. This option keeps our current convenient parking intact, a huge plus. Removing any parking from an already anorexic situation is majorly detrimental to our current businesses and could most likely discourage any new businesses from considering Northfield. I also hope that, was not in my email, but I also hope that now that we know that we own 2 of the 3 streets, that we will have more leverage. I also like to, I FOIA'd Des Plaines to find out what their safety was on their roundabout. In 2019, they had 1 accident with injuries, 20 accidents without. 2020, they had 1 with injuries, 27 without. 2021, they had 0 injuries, 28 without. 22, they had 0 injuries, 17 without. 23, they had 3 with injuries, 26 without. In 2024, as of 9/12, they had 21 without injuries. We've had 11 in the last 5 years in that intersection. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Fred Steineman, 141 Hap Road. A year ago, I took a vacation to New Zealand for the Women's World Cup, came back and found that 2 trees were removed from my parkway. Now, I call it my parkway, as I'm sure many of us who have these lawns or such in front of our sidewalk, because I cut the grass, I rake the leaves and stuff, so I maintain that property. When I contacted the village, I was told we had nothing to do with it, contacted the county. I got an answer saying, it's our property, we can do what we need to do. And I said, well, where was my heads up? Maybe a letter, a postcard, a note at my door. Hey, we're coming to do something in front of your house. No one could clarify where the direction came from. I bring this up because through this Hap Road project expansion, over 20 trees are going to be affected going south or on the south end here of Hap Road to Winnetka. And that's got to have some sort of effect on the percentage of trees that we have in this village to be considered a tree village or a village of trees. And my concern is this necessary? And will the county just do whatever they want because it's their property? Now, having learned about this, we took the liberty, myself and some other concerned citizens, took the liberty of putting ribbons and messages on these trees. And those people that might walk down the street could see, this tree won't be here in a couple of years because of this project. I found out Monday morning that Public Works employees were instructed to remove these messages. And I come back and say, well, this is county property. They weren't county employees. These were Northfield Public Works employees. And my concern is, has the village decided that it's their concern, or is it a county issue? And if the village has already taken a stance, and I see the topic is on our tonight's agenda, I would ask the board members to have the information that they've gathered or have been presented by the county and the engineering company to have some sort of clarified decision or idea about where they think. And I understand that these decisions were made by boards 2 and 3 terms ago, and you've inherited a decision that they've made. But having not been there for these discussions and these steering committees and such, I would ask the board presently to hear what the village is talking about, the residents and the citizens involved and affected by this, to express their opinions, but also their choice. And what they're hearing from us, myself especially, how we feel that this is not something that needs to happen for the sake of our village. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
I'm Jane Clark from 138 Eddy Lane. I've been here 35 years. I'm strongly opposed to the roundabout. I frequent all the businesses in downtown Northfield, and losing parking is a big mistake. And I furthermore agree with Kathy and everyone that says we need to stop just because this was proposed so long ago. We need to start over. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the board? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Sue Kelly. I live at 1642 Orchard Lane. Recently, this Hap Road project has gained a lot of attention, which I'm thankful for, so that people are aware of what is going on. I would like to acknowledge that at the time of the Hap Road project's inception, none of the members on this current board were serving, and we've also been through several village managers since that time. You were not part of the original Hap Road roundabout problem, but you can be part of the solution. You, as a board, can stop, take a step backwards, listen to the residents and business owners, and choose the best solution moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Ed Clark, Jane's husband at 138 Eddy Lane. I think government misspending of taxpayers' money. I feel that having parking for our local businesses, we've got the chocolate shop closed, we've got several businesses, and that's not going to be helped by a roundabout. I think that we need to spend villages' taxpayers much more responsibility looking to the future. This country is $36 trillion in debt, and spending has never been a problem at government. I think right now we should stop the spending and listen to the people and support the businesses that are in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Carol Ritchell, 811 Hap. Regarding the Hap Road project. On July 20th, 2023, Stacy Sigmund went from being our village manager to the executive director of special projects, which included the Hap Road project. For months, many of us have wrestled with trying to understand the history of this project. Stacy is the constant in this. As somebody else just said, none of you were involved. You guys, she was. She was there from the beginning. Sorry, I gotta turn my page here. I'm sorry. Her physical presence is not necessary. I think her input is. And I find it really confusing that none of you have reported contacting Stacy to answer some of our questions, and I'd like to know why. Seems pretty simple. Go to the source. Thank you.
Anyone else? Don, I'm going to interrupt you just for a sec.
Absolutely.
We have some special visitors. Holly, we have some special visitors that I want to recognize. Mel, can you help me out on this?
Yes, so tonight we are joined by the lovely ladies of the local Girl Scout troop and Don. They stopped in to learn about local government in pursuit of one of their badges. And we talked all about what the village does for them in our different departments. And they were wonderful listeners, and we learned a lot. They created some signs that they wanted to ask the trustees if they would be interested in displaying in their yards, their vote signs. And they worked hard on those, and they were just wondering if the trustees would like some.
Yes, we'll take them.
So if we could have a hand for our ladies for learning about local government. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Greg.
Boy, and I thought I'd really have to clean this thing up. Hi, Don Graff, a direct descendant of the swamp people of Northfield. Like to see the board and like to see the future board there too. It's great. I'm guilty of something, very guilty of something. It's happened really soon. According to a village Facebook post, I'm definitely guilty of placing a sign in my parkway. I'm also an accomplice. Last week, a neighbor posted a garage sale sign right in my front yard, right on the corner. I'm on the corner lot. It wasn't regulation size. It was smaller. Now, on that sign, she also attached, it's going to be tough to say this, she also attached two balloons, a red one and a green one. Now, I can't afford to have this on my record. When and where do I turn myself in? I really needed to get this off my chest. But wait, there's more. From page 47 of the 2040 Northfield Vision Plan regarding our business district, the village should update the village center design guidelines to encourage property owners to feature murals and other visual art on private property. Well, why wait? Let's do that now. There's an architectural committee meeting tomorrow night to discuss the Stormy's Restaurant artistic mural created by a very popular artist who was able to find time in his busy schedule to paint a non-commercial, community-oriented, awesome work of art. Let's hope it all works out. Now, were these two examples of possible local government overreach? You know, it's been great to see Tim Frenzer streamline the restaurant application process in order to have more businesses come here. Also great for Patrick Brennan to overhaul the accounting systems. There's a good starts. Now our village really needs a fresh start, which will hopefully result in an overdue and complete cleanup of obsolete ordinances and finally get rid of Northfield's Department of the Redundancy Department. But wait, there's more. Just a little bit. As you might know, I have several issues regarding Cook County and how, in my opinion, they neglect or at least drastically underserve our village. In the interest of being civil, there's just one example that I will say. In the close call department, last Saturday morning, while attempting to cross the street, a Northfield Village trustee almost became a human hood ornament at the Lagoon Drive and Winnetka Road crosswalk. The car missed him by this much. I'll close with this. Wakey, wakey, Cook County. Thank you.
That trustee would be me, by the way. I was crossing the road and almost got creamed.
Anyone else? Please. Eileen.
First, I apologize for being late. I was told the meeting was at New Trier. I've been wandering around New Trier looking for the meeting. And I hope, because I came late, I don't know if this is the appropriate sequence. I have been a 40-year resident. I live at 617 Thornwood Lane, and I own the Canvasback Needlepoint shop. Several years ago, I was privileged to be invited to participate on the 2040 Commission. And we did a lot of conversation, a lot of work about what Northfield could look like in the year 2040. And there was a very fancy and expensive consultancy hired, and they gave a lot of speeches and produced a whole report and vision of what Northfield could look like in 2040. And my recollection of it was that they said, we definitely need more parking. We definitely need to develop brick walkways and more attractive areas in the shopping area. We definitely need to build more shops. We definitely need to attend to residency above those shops, and that this kind of construction would build a kind of traffic issue in Northfield that we would have to address at that time once all this parking and all of these stores and all of these residents were built. And that's when they suggested that we think about a roundabout to resolve what would be a serious parking problem. And for those of us who participated on the 2040 Commission, it made some sense then, at the end. And it feels to me, as a shop owner who is fearing losing parking, losing the ability of my customers to get to my shop, and enormous interruption, it feels like we have put the cart before the horse. I'm not philosophically opposed to the concept of roundabouts, but I am philosophically opposed to building a roundabout that we don't really need right now when there's so many other things that we do need, like more parking, better lit parking, more shops. There's 100% occupancy at this time. I would love to expand my shop, but there's nowhere for me to go. We need to attend to those kinds of things first, and I'm sure that their dreams and the 2040 Commission's dreams of Northfield being a very busy and occupied town will come true. And when they do, a roundabout is not out of the question, but it seems a preposterous waste of money and risk to my business, certainly, to put in a roundabout when there's no need for it right now, when there's so many other needs. All you have to do is wander out to that parking lot right now, or even today during the rain, where I had customers driving into the alley next to me and getting out of their cars because there was nowhere for them to park, nowhere. And so if you want to talk about a need, parking is the need. And there were supposed to be beautiful, I can remember, beautiful brick walkways. They had this lovely illustration of how this all could look. And instead, we're talking about a roundabout that resolves nothing in 2024, 25, 26, 27. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the trustees? Hearing none, moving on to the next item on our agenda, approval of minutes. We have several session meeting minutes that I'm going to group together for approval. September 11th, 2024, open session meeting minutes. September 17th, 2024, open session meeting minutes. September 17th, closed session meeting minutes. Any comments about those meeting minutes? Any adjustments? Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from the 11th, the 17th, and the 17th.
Can I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda, review of the potential Winnetka Road Bridge aesthetic enhancements. Patrick.
Thank you. For those of you who were not here previously when we talked about this item, the village board learned that IDOT was looking at replacing the bridge spanning the Edens at Winnetka Road. Part of that project was to actually raise the deck of the roof and a total replacement of the structure. Since the board learned of this, they also knew that there was a possibility of doing some aesthetic enhancements to take that, I'll call it a step up from the standard IDOT approach. The board directed us to find a consultant to help with those potential processes, And this evening, I've got Mike Wood from Hitchcock Design here, who's done a lot of these projects with IDOT and has a good concept of what they will and will not approve, to roll through some concepts to get the input of the village board. Sir?
Mike, welcome, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, here today to talk about the possible aesthetic enhancements to the Winnicott Road Bridge. Currently, IDOT is in phase 1 of design, and we based our drawings and early concepts off their preliminary geometry. And we'd like to run through all those with you today, gather your feedback, and ideally, coming out of this meeting, take your feedback, advance a preferred concept that we can then take to IDOT and review with them to make sure that what we're recommending is approvable. All the components that we'll walk through for each concept has been approved by IDOT in the past, but every project is situational, and we definitely need to go through the process. They've been responsive to this point in time, so it's a good start. Okay. Sorry, one other thing to point out is that the expectation is, with these enhancements, is that the village would fund the improvements and maintenance of any items that are over or above and beyond the standard IDOT components. So what you see on your screen is a bit of an enlargement of the current IDOT drawings. The preliminary engineering it's a bit messy at this point, but it shows the new bridge geometry, very similar to what's there. An expanded sidewalk on the south side. I believe it's 15 feet wide to allow for a multi-use path, and then the north side is 7 feet. Parapet walls on the north and south sides with guardrails. So these are their drawings, not fully developed, but this is what we had to work with. As you can see on the top, there's parapet walls, the standard galvanized chain link guardrails, and then on the bottom, those don't necessarily show up, but you will see that they do show MSE walls, which is mechanically stabilized earth walls, which are really common for these types of bridges. There is the possibility of customizing things, but we'll get to those in the options.
Mike, can I interrupt you a second? MSE, mechanically
Stabilized earth.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
On the drive up here, as I was sitting in traffic, I got a good look at some good examples out by Oak Brook on 294. All those walls, you can see that there's panels, but then there's a form liner pattern customized into it.
Yeah. So these rectangular panels are they're kind of slotted, the tongue and groove kind of together. Is that what they do?
Correct.
Okay, great.
And that's what they have planned at this point. Pending further coordination with IDOT, they could be cast in place, they could be MSE walls. I think MSE is the more efficient way to build it. Oh, sorry, going back, just a few examples of example photos of what's currently there for reference. Pretty much replacing the bridge in kind, but like Patrick said, raising the bridge a bit for clearance, and then expanding the walk on the south side. Here are a few examples when we were engaged to work on this that the village liked. The one on the left shows an example of, it looks like a smaller MSE wall and then a wing wall with a form liner village name and a road name above it. And then on the left that's more of a or on the right is more of a cast in place wall, but it has some interesting detailing. Apologies for the really blurry picture. Just a little bit of background, looking at what the village has. We worked on these signs a few years ago, and as part of the sign on the left, we looked at multiple different options for the stone and landed on this Pennsylvania fieldstone, which is a bit darker and has more character than some others, but the strong logo type, easily recognizable, and the intent is to try to get that brand on the bridge. A little bit more background, colors, logo type, different ways to use the N. So we looked at these as we were working through concepts. So this is our interpretation of the base IDOT improvement. You'd have the parapet walls with the guardrails, the MSC walls flanking the sides, and then you'd have that I-beam construction, the darker gray that runs right above the vehicles. I've seen them different colors, but gray seems to be pretty common. So it'd be a nice new bridge, but we think we can, address the village brand and identity a little bit more. The concepts, as we go, are going to go from low to high, just for reference. So simple.
In expense, right?
And yes, and just complication.
Okay.
So at a at a minimum on the parapet wall, you could add you could see the. I don't know if yep, right there. You could see those rectangles. That'd be more of a simple form liner, a pattern. It doesn't have to be those rectangles, but it's just a representation. You could add the Winnetka Road name. That will have to be over the shoulder. IDOT won't allow anything over the vehicular route of travel. And then over the bridge, you'd have an enhanced guardrail. So maybe it's probably similar, but black, so it blends in a little bit more. It looks less galvanized and utilitarian. And then the opportunity to stain the existing, the proposed MSE wall, so it's not more of a concrete color. It could be any color that the stain comes in. And then a sign wall. So IDOT will not allow any signs of this type more than 32 square feet, and in context or scale, that is the size that it would be. So it can't really get any bigger than that unless we ask IDOT very nicely. So that's concept one, or concept A. Concept B, similar, but instead of the simple form liner along the parapet wall, you'd add more of a stone form liner, which is a pretty common approach, and then you would apply that same form liner to the wing walls. Similar name, road name here, and then enhanced guardrails, both the full height and short on top of the parapet wall. Concept C, moving forward, there's an opportunity to add some columns, which would be a nice place to put the N of your logo. Let's see. Yep, columns at the end, give it a bit more presence and architectural interest. And you will notice going back and forth, we are just showing a few different colors. This darker color lends more to the existing sign that has the darker brown stone.
Excuse me, the mic seems to be on again.
Oh, sorry, I was just blown away. Yep.
Mike, let me ask a question. So
Yes,
is
sir.
this form liner then kind of laminated onto the MSE wall, or is it a completely different construction?
MSE, it'd be cast into the MSE wall panels.
Interesting, okay.
So you'd see the pattern when it's built. I have a good example picture, but you'd apply an opaque stain. It could come in a single or multicolor to make it more interesting. Obviously, the more colors you add, the more expensive it gets.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a good example later.
Okay.
Concept D is similar to, Concept D is similar to C, except you add a third column in the middle, and the village name sign goes from the wing wall up to the parapet wall height, and there's just a taller parapet wall to accommodate that. And then lights, there's opportunity to add lights on top of the columns. And then concept E is similar, but we wanted to address the comp image that we received early on that would bring more of a column, full column height down in terms of an architectural detail all the way to the ground. A bit more complicated to construct, but yeah, it's just an idea. So moving on, just a few different ways with the form liner. you can create a flat piece and then cast in the village logo type there. You can add it's difficult to represent in 2D, but more of a dimensional sign panel that would just be applied to the wall. And then you can also look at different colors within your branding style guide. Instead of just black, it could be that brown or a blue.
What would you call that? The one your pointer is on right now. What's that style? Is there a name for it?
It would just be a cast in place, and it'd be cast in and then painted. But I think we were just trying to show different colors you could use. Just an example of a form liner pattern. We can dig deep and explore multiple different patterns, but this seems to be consistent with the stone pattern that was used on the sign on Willow Road. And then we'd recommend going with more of the earth tones for the stain, as they just seem to last longer. And when they fade, it's less. Doesn't go from red to pink. It goes, stays in that earth tone range. Just a few comparable images to show what we're talking about. This one in the upper left is a typical parapet wall with the galvanized fence. So this is our interpretation of the IDOT standard. This one on the right shows before and after of the stain application. So here you'd have your form liner, and then here you have the stain on top of it. So that shows with and without color. And then MSC wall on the side without a pattern.
Quick question about the stain. Would that have to be restained every so many years? Would that fade, peel? What's the lifespan?
Our understanding is that it has a long lifespan. I'd have to go back and confirm, but I can get an answer for you. But I think our assumption is 20 years, but I could be wrong. I'll look it up and get back to you.
Thank you.
Here's an example of one of our projects under construction. This is over I-80 in Tinley Park. IDOT has approved this. Here's a form liner column with a panel before any stain or color was applied. And same here, 80th Avenue shows how it's over the shoulder. It's hard to see, at least from my perspective right here, but this is the MSC wall with a form liner on it. It's a project in Schaumburg. The top two are a project we found in Michigan. It's not ours, but it is a good example of what you can do with a form liner color. This has a 3-color blend, so it makes it look a little bit more realistic. This is without the stars and stripes. More of the fence you'll get with an upgraded fence, so black mesh and black bars. And here's an example of a custom one. IDOT will allow custom fencing and guardrails, but it has to meet their standards, so it's a bit more of a process, but it's doable.
Mm-hmm.
So just to touch on budgetary costs, we took an initial shot at takeoffs and unit prices for what we think is above the IDOT improvements. So for let's say, for example, a guardrail, it would go from the galvanized, then you'd add, I don't have it in front of me, but it's like $50 a foot for vinyl coated chain link black. So just that increment over the base. So the base concept with just the MSC walls and the simple form liner costs total range, in our opinion, is $125,000 to $175,000. We can circle back and look at the plans again. Concept B, that adds the stone form liner to all surfaces and adds a stain in the sign, is between $225,000 and $250,000. Concept C, which adds the decorative columns, is between $275,000 and $325,000. And then concept D, that adds the sixth column, the fifth and sixth columns, and then the lights on top, between 375 and 425,000.
So I was considering this over the weekend. There's concept D. Is there any reason why it was left out of this pricing? Sorry.
Concept E.
Yeah, E.
They were very similar. Concept E, we did have it on there. Sorry, Patrick, I forgot what we had discussed, but Concept E would be probably between 450 and 500,000.
Thanks, Mike. We're going to probably be toggling back to some of those other images, but I'd like to hear from the trustees. Anybody have any opinions on these designs?
Can I just ask what the timing of this project is? What budget year are we potentially putting this money into?
Since IDOT's in phase one now, we think that based on their timing, this is likely a 2027-ish project, because they haven't even gone through their phase one analysis yet. And I saw a letter about what their long-term project funding is. I'm thinking 27, 28.
And there are no potential grants available for any of this cost overage that the village would absorb?
Not that I'm aware of. Normally, when you get grants, it is for work on something you own. So this, since it's an IDOT project, we wouldn't be likely to get it. I would, of course, continue to look for opportunities, but I think it's unlikely for us to see that come.
Okay.
I was having a discussion with a colleague, and since this is a funded project that's going to happen with or without the aesthetic enhancements, it could be eligible for an ITEP grant.
Oh, great.
So can look into that, just to confirm, but
Two questions. I think I heard you right. We couldn't put Northfield across the road, right? Because in Indiana, if you've been to Lebanon, north of, I mean, but we can't do that, so we won't talk about it.
no, IDOT, Tollway, they all have different rules. So, yeah, I agree, it'd be great if we could do that, but
Could we do just Northfield, like Village of Northfield? It seems like since we're working on an identity piece, I mean, I know we are the Village of Northfield, but if we just did the word Northfield, could it be bigger and more visible as a design?
Yep, it would take the same, if you look on the wall here, if you remove the Village of and you take Northfield, and then it would be longer, but it would, as long as we're within that 32 square feet, we can make that work.
Yeah, because I liked a lot of the designs, but I just feel like this whole idea is to get Northfield out there on the Edens and to make it as big as possible, so I would support that.
Mike, there are limitations, though, on the actual square footage of that, the signage on the parapet or on the buttress there.
Correct.
I mean, it's something like, 6 square feet or something, so we wouldn't get length, probably. We'd be, we're going to end up with a rectangle, right? So what I'm questioning, Barnaby, it's a good point. By adding into by having the Village of Northfield, I don't think we'd gain much as far as font size. I mean, as far as the actual letter size. I'm asking for your opinion, actually. I'm just.
I think it's worth exploring. If you get rid of that top piece, it'll end up being longer, but the height of Northfield itself would be taller.
Okay.
So as long as we had the room on the walls to apply it, it would work.
Okay.
So yeah, we can take a look at it.
Anything else, Barnaby? No. Okay.
I think Charlie was asking just about the life of the stain, I think, but what about the different materials? Is there any sort of difference in lifespan on different materials for the different options?
Not necessarily. It'd be the same material as the MSE wall, except that there'd be a cast pattern into it. One thing to consider with the parapet walls is that you would have to add the width of the concrete, add the depth of the form liner to the concrete parapet wall. So it'd go from, let's say, a foot wide to 14 inches wide, for example. It'd be all similar materials. I don't see any longevity issues with anything.
So you'd expect the materials to last longer than the stain is what you're saying from what?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so staff is looking for a direction on one of these concepts, and does anybody have any opinion on which one which one their favor?
It could be a combination of pieces from.
I would like to weigh in. I wasn't quite ready to answer that question, but I think I'll go for it. Traveling at 70 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour, depending on the time of day, I mean, I like the identity signage. but I'm not a fan of going all the way to the top in terms of price. What I am interested in knowing is, and I know that these are sort of mix and match elements, but if we took concept B or concept C, we could still add lighting to those columns, at least on the east and west side of the road. We just wouldn't have the middle section. I'm sorry, concept B, you don't have the columns, so it'd have to go into the concept C design, correct?
Yes.
We could put lights there. Okay. I'm hesitant to spend that much money, I have to be honest.
Well, I think, my opinion is that this is an opportunity to, a branding opportunity, and I think we shouldn't miss it, rather than have a standard IDOT bridge there. That's obviously the reason why we're talking about this. I think we look for, my personal view is, I like concept C, but we look for ways to save money, which is not staining the form liner, keeping it just that concrete color. Actually would match better, I think, with the rest of the elements in that bridge. I like the, I don't think we need, my personal opinion is I don't think we need lights on that, the parapets, Mike, is that what you call it? Or the little towers that would hold those lights, what are those called?
Yeah, those are columns.
Columns, okay, so, oh yeah, thanks. You know, what I like about having the columns there is that as you're driving on Winnetka Road, it blocks the side profile of the fencing itself, and it kind of hides it better, because it's pretty ugly fencing. I get it, you got to have it to keep people from jumping onto the highway, but I think there's from an aesthetic standpoint, when you're in Northfield driving on Winnetka Road, it looks better. So my personal opinion would be concept C. I don't think we need to pay for the lights. I think upgraded or black mesh makes a lot of sense. I think we'd all agree with that. But I think C, we can save money by not colorizing any of it. But I'd love to hear the rest of the trustees and their views on this.
What's the drop dead date that we have to make a decision on this? Is there one?
I don't think there's one.
I mean, because obviously when you're saying 2027, 2028, we're in 2024, and our budget process, that there isn't a necessity that we have to make a decision tonight, correct?
Probably not. And the reason I say probably is because IDOT's working through their Phase 1 process. At some point, they're going to say, we're ready to release our Phase 1 materials, and we need to make sure Hitchcock has enough time to prepare what we want. If the board's willing, it may be easier for Mike to go through the elements and just get a show of hands for what elements you really would like to see in the bridge. For example, do you want to see the MSE wall with a form liner to give it a stone look? You know, if the group likes that, if you want a sign of the road name off to the side, do you want the Northfield sign? We can take those elements then and try to narrow down the pricing and say, okay, if you want these elements in the aesthetic enhancements, we think that it'll get closer to this number. So for example, if we want to omit the stain versus stain, Mike should be able to give us a rough idea of what that cost savings would be and bring this back at your January meeting. I don't know if we'd make the December, but maybe we would, and keep this project moving.
Okay, let me just try one thing, and that's a good idea, but I really see this as a simple distinction of Northfield versus other towns. You're driving up the Edens, we'd be the ones that have our name. And, you know, it's almost like a billboard or something, but it's, and to Tracy's point, people are driving fast, probably. But so I want our name out there, but I don't think we need to spend a lot to do it. So I really like option A. I think it's a commitment to an idea. It gets us out there, gets a foot in the door in this. We have other identity needs downtown. I'd like to spend that money on some signs for our downtown. Welcome to downtown Northfield. So I think we could raise a flag out on the Edens and then have other money for other signage downtown. So I have an appetite for A. It's practical, but I think it gets the job done.
I would agree that the branding is important, but I would also agree that with the monies that we're spending on things, that we would also consider that and try to keep the cost down. I would also like to hear from the residents, since this is a public fund issue, and see what their opinion is, what kind of monies we should be spending on this project.
Todd, do you have any opinion?
I tend to agree with you. I like option C just because I do like the columns coming up. It identifies us a little bit different than the rest of the overpasses that you go under on the Edens, and you know where you are. I agree we have to have the signage Northfield on the side, but I do like the columns. I think that you bring up a good point. It kind of masks the fencing from somebody walking because it is pretty ugly with the curvature. So I do like that option. And I don't know what the state is doing, IDOT's doing, but the lighting, I don't think we need to do lights. There's a lot of lighting in that area.
Yeah.
But I would like to understand what they're replacing, if they're replacing anything related to that intersection. It would be interesting to see.
Roadway lighting?
Yeah, just to understand what's going to be there.
Right.
We have an email into IDOT right now. That was one of the questions we asked is what's the plan for that? So
I'm not sold on the lighting, so if we find that we get the right answer from IDOT, then, you know, these 4 little column lights are not going to illuminate the entire bridge expanse and the crosswalks anyway, so I have no problem with eliminating that request.
I think we got to keep in mind, too, that Willow Road's going to be redone at some point, too, and this is something that will likely translate to, you know, the other bridges in the village along IDOT's route. I even like on C, I even like the way the village of Northfield is kind of pressed into the form liner like that, rather than a framed, just a sign that, what's the other concept that we saw there that is a kind of a placard, right? I like that, just the way you show it on C. I think it's a really cool look. And I think, Mike, I guess what we're gonna end up doing here is asking you to come back and itemize some of the costs here. So I don't mind for instance, in C, it also shows the MSE wall with the form liner. So you can still see the rectangular form liner shape, but those individually then have that, or the MSC shape with the form liner embossed. And that might save us some money too, right? It's a little less expensive to construct like that, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So I guess what we should instruct Mike to.
Tom and Matt haven't spoke yet, so I
Yep.
just want to see if we have any
Tom?
thoughts.
So I don't know if you showed the village of Green Oaks up on 294. I drove past it yesterday, it caught my eye. Oh, sorry, it's further back. I thought you
It's there.
It's in your example.
Yeah, right up, so Green Oaks over here on the left side, your left. You know, I look at what we have out on Winneck Avenue right now, and anything's better than what's there right now. And from a maintenance perspective, lights, snow plows, cars throwing stones, lights are completely out. I struggle with all the fancy designs and everything because it's so aesthetically pleasing with the green oaks, and you could do Winnetka across the top like that in the concrete. I just, like I said, anything's better than what's out there, and anything that requires the least amount of maintenance, because you are working now not only on a county road right away, you're working on an IDOT highway right away, putting people in to make repairs on the concrete and all the other things. I think we need to do something that is less detailed and more of a flat surface where water won't stay and require maintenance pretty often. So I'm with the simplest, which would be concept A or concept B.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Tom said most of what I was thinking. As you go down, I mean, D is beautiful, but I think it's a cost benefit, and it's also a maintenance issue. So I think we need to be conscious of how much we would spend on this, and I'm kind of in the B category, but I'd like for you to come back and maybe itemize so we can mix and match.
Whose responsibility does the maintenance fall under?
If we enhance what IDOT standard is, we would be
Yes.
responsible for it.
So if we want to power wash the bridge abutments, that's on us because we upgraded?
I'm totally guessing here. More than likely, IDOT would want us to pay them to have their people do it because it'd be, or a contractor do it because it'd be a huge
Right.
project, yes.
Right.
Mike, do you feel like you have enough? I know we're kind of looking at kind of itemizing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think we can discount D and E completely. That's those, and I think I'm not sure, Tom, whether you were saying that the parapet wall with like it's shown with green oaks, that's the most expensive option, and I don't think we need that. But I think, so D and E are out, in my view. I think C and B is a consensus of this. So let's, if we can, within those designs, break down, and then the trustees can make a decision on whether or not to include certain elements.
Great, yep. And then, yep, we can itemize each component, what it costs, and how many there are per concept.
Perfect. Even as far as going down to the, so I think unstained would save us some money, and I think it's easier to maintain. It's and I think it looks better too. I think it's better aesthetic.
Yep, just to circle back on an example.
Yeah, like the lower right there. That's essentially the unstained. Yeah, although so the MSE with the form liner on the lower right is kind of, we might be able to save some money by going at that design, right? It's less expensive than the Tinley Park process, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay.
The column makes it expensive.
Great.
All right.
You have everything you need?
Yes, I do.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I guess the only thing I was going to say is, I don't, unless you feel differently, I'm not sure we need to rush to try to get this on the December agenda. I mean, it's up to you, Patrick, but I don't think we need to move mountains to get it on the December agenda, in my opinion. But you decide.
Thank you. We'll talk afterwards, and I'll also look at, we've got a calendar we put out for future meetings.
Sure.
To see where that balances in and doesn't overload any one meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike, for being here.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay if you want, Mike. It's totally
Next on the agenda, Patrick's going to lead a discussion regarding a police pension funding policy.
Sure. In the interest of time, let me just give a quick kind of overview of what this item is. I know the majority of the people, I'm guessing the majority of the people here to talk about Hap Road, so I'll just kind of go through this. Under the assumption most of you have read the packet and what the material is, for the public, what we've done is I've looked, as I start to get comfortable here, I'm starting to look at some of the policies we have. One of the pieces that I saw that we didn't have was a policy that is more formal about how we fund our police pension plan annually. And I know from past experience, that's one of the things when bond rating agencies look at a community, they say, do you have these sorts of policies in place? What it also does is help us ensure that we have a more stable actuarial report, because the assumptions used in that actuary's report don't vary from year to year. Because those assumptions can have a dramatic impact on how much we have to pay. And annually, we spend about right now $1.4 million for our police pension plan. And that number is scheduled to go up next year by $138,000. So my recommendation of the board was to take a look at a police pension funding policy that dictates, we're targeting 100% of what our required contribution is every year. It sets the assumptions at a stable number based on where they are today. But if the actuary recommends them changing in the future, the actuary would come to the village board and the police pension board and have a discussion about why they recommend a change, what those impacts are. And then finally, it sets forth a process for me that at least twice a year, I will take a look at how our revenues and expenditures are going. And based on that, look at whether or not it's time to make a recommendation to the village board. Do we contribute additional amounts to our police pension fund, trying to target getting that paid off sooner? Last month, our actuary came in and gave us a kind of a prognosis, if you will, for our financial health. And while we are paying 100% of what we're required annually, we're not making significant progress toward achieving the state's goal of 90% funding by the year 2040. Now, there's a high likelihood that the state will probably punt that date forward again, but the village is being even more conservative in trying to hit 100% funding by 2040. So they're doing a good job and have been doing a good job funding that. I just want to make sure that we keep that stable through this policy. And the board report went into more details about the actual items, but those are the primary facets of why I'm recommending the board consider a policy. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think this makes all kinds of sense. We already have a refined policy, and this takes it a couple steps further. And the thing that resonated with me is that the rating agencies look closely at this. And we have a AAA bond rating, and everything we can do to preserve that is important. Anybody else?
Well, I think it's important to set this up because right now we're 66% funded for that 2040 goal of 90 to 100%. Obviously, we want to do 100%. And the more we can contribute earlier, the less it'll cost later. And I think it's important to set this standard for future boards so that they have this and understand this so that they don't try to change it later on and understand why we're doing this. To have something like this in place is important for future boards to be able to look at and understand why we have this set up the way we do. So I think it's a good idea, Patrick.
Anybody else? Yeah, this is good, Patrick. Thank you for bringing it to us.
So our next step is we'll take this to the police pension board. They have not seen this policy yet. I'd like them to be able to look at it, weigh in on it, and we'll bring it back to a future board meeting for hopeful approval based on their input.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, continued discussion of the Hap Road Improvement Project.
Thanks.
Patrick.
Sure. So for those of you who are here at the September meeting, we talked about, or we had the members of Cook County here and Patrick Engineering to go over the Hap Road project and take some resident feedback and questions about that project and where we stood. It was very clear from that meeting that a number of residents are concerned about the overall project and especially certain elements of it. So I took that feedback and started working with the engineers in Cook County about, are there ways for us to modify this moving forward and have basically address the concerns that came out from the residents? It's a tricky process for us because we're at a point where this project is already, construction drawings already in the 95% or so done range. So normally when you'd come in and make a change to the project, it's in phase one, it's earlier. But Cook County has been very good about both participating in our meetings and having good discussions about what we can do to make sure that this project is as acceptable as possible for the group. So I'm going to go through a couple of elements tonight with you. So these are the primary areas I plan on covering. We'll talk a little bit about the easement because I know there are a number of residents in really concerned about Cook County's desire to take a portion of their land. And then I'm breaking out into south segment discussion area, which primarily dealt with the center turn lane from the comments I heard, the north segment of the roundabout, and then I'll give you a quick update on the IDOT county lease request they're making that we have made for additional parking, and then talk with the committee about what they think our next step should be. So, as I said, first of all, let's step into the easement issues. There were a number of comments at the prior meeting about people really unhappy that the county was coming in and taking their land, and this is a little bit of an assumption on my part, but I think a number of residents felt that the taking of land was directly tied to the fact that there was a recommendation for a center turn lane. So I asked our engineers to come in and show me what the change in easements would be if the center turn lane was totally out, and we just tried to stick with the current lane as what we had. So they prepared this exhibit for me, and sorry, there's a lot of colorful lines here, but let me explain them to you. This red line you see at the top is where the existing easement is, and what we're looking at right now is Hap Road going left to right on your screen, and Winnetka Road going up and down. So there's a home here on the corner, fire station is down out this way, The existing easement area is on this red line. It'll be hard for you to see on this screen, but between the green line, which is the proposed right-of-way line, and the red line is a dotted, or two sets of parallel dotted lines. Those dotted lines are the existing sidewalk. So for those, whoever's dimming the lights, thank you, Melissa. For those people who are in this area, the sidewalk is actually on your property. I don't know how or when it happened, but normally when a town or a county or the state comes in and puts in public sidewalk, it is on the public's land, which means that the people who own these homes, and I'll go through a couple of sets here, are actually paying taxes on, and some may say have some liability exposure for the public sidewalk within their property. So what Cook County has told me is the only reason they're asking to move these right-of-way lines is to bring the sidewalk within the right-of-way area owned and under the responsibility of Cook County. The yellow lines, which are a little harder to see on our projection screen, but it may be more clear up and through here, those are temporary easement areas for these property owners, meaning that Cook County, as they change the elevation of the road somewhat, wants to make sure that they get a good taper for the residents' driveways and drive aprons, so it isn't too big a hump or a drop down as they enter Hap Road. So anytime the county's working on your personal land, they want to make sure they have a temporary right to access your property and taper your driveway that's being put back in at the county's cost to ensure it meets the road. So you see there's home here, and home here. These three properties, and I've blocked out the homeowner's name because I just didn't like the idea of putting public information out on the screen like this about who exactly live where. But part taken is 406 square feet for this parcel 2, which if I remember right, let me take a better look here. Thank you. Parcel 2 is this one. So the area between the red line and the green line is about 406 square feet. The temporary easement area, and you see a property line going right through here, is about 246 square feet. So for each of these slides, and we'll get, with Melissa's help, we'll get this presentation on our website tomorrow, so you can flip through this if you'd like. There's both the permanent easement to get the sidewalk within the county's responsibility and domain, and a temporary easement for construction activity. Here's the next set, another group of 3 properties. I'm just moving further north toward Orchard Lane. Again, the same thing. Sidewalk is within the resident's property line. The standard right-of-way is here. Here you see a jog in the right-of-way line. Again, I have no idea at what point these lines got changed. Oh, actually, this one has been changed recently because there was some work on these properties, and part of that development process, we started to move that line in. So you see the sidewalk here. The county's already moved their right-of-way line as part of that action on the properties. But the temporary easement areas still exist. And then lastly, this is the last set of properties. Here's moving further north. You see the lines, and if I can balance my hand out a little bit more, there's the inner part of the sidewalk, there's our outer part of the sidewalk, and normally 12 to 18 inches away is where the right-of-way line ends from the outside portion of the sidewalk, or the resident home side of the sidewalk. This is the way it is through almost the entire remainder of the project area, both on the west side of the street and the east side of the street. However, those homes on the far south are the only areas that, from a resident, Cook County is asking to take over that portion of their land. Once that transfer happens, your property tax responsibility will actually be lower because you have less land than you had before. So there's a positive impact there also, in addition to what I believe is probably a bit of a liability concern. Here's the temporary easement area. So hopefully I kind of nailed or fully understood what the residents talking about the easement were expressing. I don't know if anybody's come through as you're talking to Santa Cruz or others and fully explained this, both the potential liability end and the reason that they were doing this. But no matter what happens, if the county, I want to speak a little bit for the county, if the county didn't do this project at all, they are still going to seek to get the sidewalks within the right-of-way, is my understanding. I could be wrong, but they see this as an error at some point that they wish to correct. And as a resident, personally, I would want that sidewalk in the county land rather than mine, but that's totally an individual property owner's decision. Any questions from the trustees, or if you don't mind, if the public about just this easement piece?
Sure. Anybody? Don, you'll have to approach. Don, you need to approach. We have, there's people online as well.
It's dark, Don, and we can't see you well enough unless you approach.
Hi, Don Graff. The easement on the west side of that street, is that still going to be the 8 or 9 foot wide walkaway?
So
in any scenario?
So, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Currently, I believe so, but there is no permanent right-of-way change on the west side of the street at all.
Oh.
The sidewalk is already within the right-of-way. They're planning to line it up so they don't have to take or request any additional land. Those 6 parcels I showed, I think it was 6, are the only ones where there's a permanent change in the right-of-way line.
So they're not showing a walkway at all that people are upset about by losing a sidewalk and making an 8 foot or 9 foot wide walkway on the west side of the street.
West side residents has no impact on their property.
Nice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Hi, Alicia Bellar. So are you saying, just to clarify, that there will be no center turn lane then?
No, what I'm saying is regardless of whether or not a center turn lane was part of this project, the county still would have come forward to make an adjustments to the right-of-way. So it wasn't, I'm trying to put a fine point on, it wasn't a center turn lane that triggered the county's request to take property from residents. So I just want to make sure that that was clear to everybody.
So then where are you netting out on the center turn lane?
That's my next thing. I wanted to clear up this one first. And just while you're approaching, any resident who has a question about this, just please call me or send me an email if you want. I'm happy to share these drawings with you, come out and talk to you about it, to explain from the best of my understanding what's happening.
So this would come up at any real estate
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
closing.
Just for the record.
This would come up at any
you just
real estate.
tell me your name,
Nancy
just for the
Blake.
record.
Nancy Blake.
Thanks.
This would come up at any real estate closing. It would come up at on any survey. It would come up with any title company. So this is strange that that no one knows about this.
Well, I don't know. I've only been here 5 months, so I don't know if in the past
No,
it's
what I'm
popped
saying,
up.
the property owner, this would come up at a closing table. It would come up with the title company. It would come up with a survey. If you're, have you ever seen a survey where they showed the fence kind of
Yeah.
doesn't go along the
A
perfect
plat of
line?
survey should show this as long as the surveyor is doing a good job in showing what the right-of-way line is, yes.
Right, so this should not be a surprise to anyone. And the title, it would be a title issue as well.
Potentially.
Yeah. So,
Fred Steineman, 141 Hap. My understanding from the county's presentation was their desire to straighten Hap from what we call the baby park to Winnetka Road. If you stand on the sidewalk and look south towards the stoplights, the road does curve west, but the county's intention was to draw it further east and make a straight line, or as straight as possible, taking the parkway from the sidewalk to the street to absorb that line and add more parkway to the west side, allowing for that 8-foot parkway or multi-use path.
From what I've seen from these drawings, Mr. Steinman, they're actually straightening the right-of-way line and the sidewalk, they're projecting 18 inches back from the sidewalk throughout the whole project area. I know there was a goal to align the lanes at Winnetka Road and Hap Road that had, that had some movement in the new Trier area where they're looking at trying to get the lanes aligned. So if you're headed northbound, you're going straight at as you cross the intersection. But from everything I've seen in the drawings, I'm not seeing where they're trying to straighten the road and it having an impact on anybody's easement request. And again, I know you're within one of these homes that we have shown. I'd be happy to share this graphic with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so let me move next to the south segment, center turn lane. I heard loud and clear from the resident participation in the last meeting that the residents don't want a center turn lane. So what we did is I worked with Patrick Engineering to say, what are our options? What could we possibly do? And we basically broke this segment into two parts, one south of the Hap Road Park and one north of the Hap Road Park. The south center segment, we looked at if can we get rid of that center turn lane altogether, or what other options do we have? And we talked about everything from, could we put a center tree-lined median in? Could we totally eliminate it? Could we put pavement sections in and paint it, narrow the roadway, and widen the parkways? And we had a conversation with Cook County about that, and they brought in their kind of expert in roadway design. And what we had hoped to do, and I'm sorry for the messy graphic, but when you're talking to a bunch of engineers, this made perfect sense to them. So let me see if I can help you understand a little bit of what they're looking at. But the dark black lines you see are under the current proposed project of where those new curb lines would be. You see the dark painted center turn lanes in black, and you see this red. The county's concern, one of those expressed, was if there's a vehicle broken down on Hap Road, if Amazon drivers parked on the roadway, if there's a water main break and we've got to shut down a lane, they wanted to make sure that there's ample room for cars to go by without needing to shut down the roadway and detour traffic. So they still wanted some roadway width. So we worked with Patrick Engineering to come up with this concept, which is basically a small painted center section about 4 or 5 foot wide, and then putting painted white lines away from the curb to give us almost like a small strip or shoulder, if you will, between the curb and that white painted line that would both give the county the width they wanted in the roadway and also respond to the resident request about, we really don't want a center turn lane. We reviewed with the county. They expressed a number of concerns and in the end weren't supportive of this concept because of concerns about people being confused by this space between the white line and the curb, not enough space through here. We talked about the center median concept, but that would require residents to have to go past their driveway, turn around and come back if it was a solid median with like a tree-lined decorative median. So anything we worked through and brought up as potential concepts, the county had reasonably good explanations of why they didn't think that that would work for this project. Now, that being said, I don't know that it's completely dead. I've asked them to continue looking at it and seeing if their roadway expert could come up with some other concepts, but I kind of hit a wall on the option of getting this concept changed south of Hap Park. At Hap Road Park, the center protected median, I didn't hear any resident concern that I recall about absolutely hating that protected median for a crosswalk. So we left that as it was. Going northbound, the section from there north into what I'll call the more business district area is so short that this kind of concept we didn't model because it would be difficult to change those two regions and widen back out for the business district area. So unfortunately, I didn't get much progress yet on the center turn lane issue. It's something I'll still keep working cooperatively with the county to see if we can do, but not such good news there. And I'm sorry for the comment about me moving mountains. I'm still digging, but I don't have that mountain moved yet. But I hope you'll be more happy with the next segment. Before I move on to the next section, any questions about this segment?
Can
Hemworth, 1655 Orchard Lane. So I guess my basic question is, what is the need for the center lane? This is residential for the most part, right? Other than the little park that they have. I travel this road multiple times every day. I've never had to wait for anyone turning left, either direction. So did the conversation start with, why do we need a center lane in the first place? That's what I don't understand.
It did, and as I had stated a little bit earlier, the county, as they look at their design standards, wanted to make sure that this roadway is wide enough that vehicles can pass, something stopped along the side of the road, that if we have to replace or work on the water main, we're not having to totally detour traffic down the road. The question I didn't ask is if we just kept it the way it is on its current width and striped it in the center, would that be acceptable? The downside of kind of replacing what's there now is that the wide roadway would not reduce vehicular speed in the area because we're looking at 11-foot lanes here as a way to visually slow drivers down based on the width of the roadway. So it's a concept we can go back to the county about, of just basically put a center line down the middle and leave the width as you have it proposed.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Patrick, I don't know there's anyone in this room who could honestly say they waited for anyone to ever turn left, either direction. So it sounds to me like this is it sounds ridiculous, a money-making scheme for Patrick Engineering, because I don't get the need for it. I really don't. If we were building, 3-story buildings, residences, retail, all up and down that corridor, I don't see that happening for decades probably. So, that's my take on it.
Thank you.
Alicia Bellar again. I would suggest that they could narrow the lanes, because that apparently calms traffic, and have a little bit of shoulder and leave the total existing width as it is. That would be my recommendation, and I agree that there isn't any evidence that we have a problem with people having to wait for turning or safety, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane Clark again. So you're saying you did not ask if we could just get rid of it altogether?
I have not asked that yet.
But you
no.
will?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Lucy Callahan. So does this have anything to do with the fact that the road might be reclassified when all these changes are made?
I don't remember hearing anything about the roadway being reclassified. It still has its classification as a regional connector, I believe, and it's still likely a federal aid route, otherwise it wouldn't be eligible for surface transportation program funding. So I don't think that what they're projecting here has any impact on its level of importance in the area.
So there is not going to be a change of classification?
I've heard nobody mention anything like that, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Can I, Patrick, I know a lot went on at that county meeting, but I definitely remember Tara Orban discussing a change of classification on that road. So when you go back to the county, I would just reconfirm that with them, because that's my recollection, and I'm guessing that may be Lucy or others' recommendation as well. Or not recollection, excuse me.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
I'll check. I remember a question about could the classification be changed and/or when did it get changed? But I don't remember a conversation about it being changed as a result of the project, but I'll ensure to get clarification on that.
Thank you.
Sorry, the left-handed writing slow. So now for the reason I think a lot of the people are here, the star of the show. I tell you, for somebody who hasn't been here for very long, this is a complicated thing. I understand why everybody got to where they were. And many of the questions I've asked as I've gone through this, talking to everybody that's been involved since the beginning, I understand why they got to where they were. But what I've done is proposed a concept and asked, no, hold on. I know this looks like a lot. This has got more, it's the color that's more disturbing. This is the image that you saw last time during our public meeting. And I just put it back up here for anybody that wasn't here at that meeting. And it's a little bit of a refresher for, this is the concept. This is Hap Road coming northbound, where people can go around and continue north. Hap Road coming north, people can come out Walnut. And Walnut access was a really important piece for a couple of reasons. One is fire department access. It's a greater than a 90-degree turn as the fire department reaches Willow Road to turn east. And our fire department is the first responder on the Edens, everywhere from, and Mike, jump in if I've got this wrong, from Willow Road southbound into Wilmette, because we can access the Edens faster than they can. Wilmette's the responder to the R portion of the Edens for northbound traffic because they can access the Edens more easily. So this piece of Walnut was an important connection. Additionally, during the busier times of the roadway, a number of residents use this as a bypass if they're going to go east on Willow. Instead of going north on Hap to Willow, they cut through here as a way to not have to sit and wait in traffic, and that relieves a little bit of the traffic on Hap. So this design, as currently processed, impacts impacts 20 on-street parking spaces. And you see the space counts here. Again, this is the same graphic that was presented at our last meeting. As I started looking at this, I wondered, is there a way that we could make this segment smaller? Because if the center section of the roundabout is smaller, we're likely to have less parking impact. And I took a few sketches to Patrick Engineering and said, I'm not an engineer, but can you take a look at these? What they did is came back with this, which I know is even more lines, and I'll clean this up in just a second for you. But we basically looked at, is it possible to insert something on Walnut Lane that traffic on Walnut cannot go south and cannot access the roundabout? The answer was yes. And this is a little bit cleaner example as I've shaded out some of the lines. You see this line here? That's the line of the roundabout as it was proposed. If we cut off the southbound lane of Walnut, this green circle is the new roundabout size. What that does is gives us the return of 2 spaces here and 3 spaces here. So it's a 5-space gain around Pam's building. The downside of this proposal is that anybody that's on Walnut is not going to be able to go south and access the roundabout. They're going to have to go north and go east on Willow. So that impacts people coming to visit the police department for a purpose, and it impacts people parking in this area. That's the only option that we could come up with that would reduce the size of the roundabout and gain some parking spaces back. There's something else that we will be discussing that could help mitigate that issue, but for right now, the concept is, and what we'll be asking the village board or the committee of the whole to negotiate or discuss is, do you want us to pursue this concept further? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So as I get to the end of the slides, I'll discuss a little bit with you how you could possibly get there and what those impacts are. So before we get too far into that, I told you I'd give you an update on the IDOT land. So this section of land back here is behind Stormy's and just off to the side of Pam's business and property, is land owned by Cook County that was given to Cook County by IDOT when the Edens was constructed. A part of that land transference is that IDOT has first right of refusal for whatever happens on that land. So the village has been making requests to the county to lease that land that goes then through IDOT for permission of whether they would allow the lease. Up until recently, IDOT has said no, no, no. And the most recent no was because their concern is that this proposed 23-space parking lot would be creating impervious surface, causing water runoff to the Edens. so increasing the potential flooding problem at the Edens. A few weeks ago, we went back to them with a concept that would take all of this runoff and pipe it underground into the village storm sewer system. The county was supportive, and since they can't say yes over the phone until they see the drawings, I can tell you that I'm 95% confident that the county is supportive of this, and we will get a lease for this area if that's what the village board wants us to achieve, moving forward on working that drainage. So that's a concept that could bring 23 spaces into and close to the business district if that's something the board wants to pursue. So we've got a couple of opportunities to go here. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, today we're further in the process than we typically would be to come back and be requesting design changes. As a number of you have mentioned tonight, those decisions were made by previously constituted village boards, but regardless, tonight that's the situation where we're at. It's about 95+% designed. What I'm asking of the committee is, do you want us to see if we can find a way to work with the county to get any of these design changes that I've put forward considered? It's going to be a bit of a process because you've already been through phase 1 and most of phase 2 preliminary design, and there's some impacts to doing that. And this next slide starts to look at what those impacts. The first is the county, of course, has to be in agreement with whatever the proposed redesign is. Because it's their roadway, they want to make sure it's something that's not going to cause a greater issue. If there's a proposal to make changes of the current designs, Patrick Engineering would have to go through and draw up those concepts, take them to Cook County for Cook County support, and then Cook County and the village would take those to IDOT to get IDOT input on the design change. IDOT would then say, is this a major redesign or a minor redesign? If it's a major redesign, it potentially puts us back to phase 1, where we started the whole project. In doing that, we would lose our our STP funding, the federal funding for the project, and be out of phase with the whole process. So best case is we would lose about 2 months through the design because IDOT considers it a minor change. Worst case is they kick us all the way back to the beginning, and this project starts all over. Now, if that happens, the 75% federal funding and the county's portion is in jeopardy for the village. So, in summary of options, I put together a little bit of a scale here for the village trustees to consider. The first, and obviously from this group, least attractive, but also least expensive, is no changes, keep going down the current path, because that's what's been paid for, designed. We've spent about $1.5 million to date in engineering analysis for this plan. The next phase is, for what we're talking about tonight, is say, take another look, redesign this, and see if we can come up with some minor modifications. If we go back to that design phase, and it's a significant redesign, the STP funds, the 75% funding I mentioned, will be gone. That will go back to the regional bucket and not be allocated to the local budget of the communities in this area for federal funding. As I mentioned, we've spent about $1.5 million thus far. If we were to go to the potentially most expensive and most difficult option, which is to break our agreements with Cook County and the federal funding, there is a high likelihood that we will be required to pay back the money spent so far because the village broke their agreements with these entities. I can't say it for sure that we'll have to pay it back because in the 22 years I've been doing this, I've never seen it happen. Cook County said they've never had anybody pull out. The other towns I've talked to that are also in for STP funding said they've never experienced this. But I do know that the federal government is highly restrictive about following the rules for their agreements. So I know it's kind of an unpleasant plate I'm putting before the trustees, but this is kind of where we are right now with this project. It's been started by a differently constituted board, It is near its final phase, but if there's a strong desire to make changes, you've got some options, and I've laid them before you the best I can.
Thank you, Patrick. I'd like to hear from the trustees. Anybody want to start out?
I'll start. I think there's a reason why we're here. It's because Phase 1 did not go the way Phase 1 needs to go to involve a community, to educate a community. And again, we started to talk about this stuff, and we can spend as much time as we want looking back, and I'm prepared to do that. I've got a long list of things that were not done properly, but an article appeared January 25th, January 26th, 2015, the village manager of our town saying we need a roundabout for identity and to move traffic around. That's a year before the steering committee got together. The steering committee, and we've heard a bunch of reports, and one of them we got was from Steve Cummings, who served on the steering committee. He would be here tonight, but it's his anniversary. He will be at the meeting tomorrow, he tells me, but he's given me permission to share his letter. But he talked about being on, and he is the head of a condo association off of Hap Road. And he talked about being on this committee, and when he started asking questions about the roundabout, he was asked off the committee. And his final line, objections to this proposal by myself and other members of the former steering committee were possibly the reason we were not further called upon to participate past 2017. I think it is unconscionable to eliminate orchard parking and run the risk of putting establishments out of business. So the word a committee member used was unconscionable. I think that's where we're at now, which is we have an unconscionable project underway. And I just want to say, and again, I'm prepared to talk all night about this. Let's talk about safety, because one of the pedestrian safety. So we've got a 5-legged roundabout. And each one of those little legs, you got to get to the middle and then across. Traffic coming one way. So there's a little challenge there. Northfield folks are smart and good drivers, and we'd figure it out. But you know who wouldn't figure it out? The person on the Edens coming south, listening to their navigation system, says, get off the Edens at Tower Road. Come down Hap, and while you're coming down Hap, your navigation system changes its mind and says, you know what, the Eden's okay, so I'm going to send you through, and I'm going to get you back going the right way. But as you enter the roundabout, and again, you're entering a roundabout, so you're looking at cars, and you're listening, and it says, take the 4th exit. Anyone who's driven a roundabout, you're looking at cars, and you are counting. Exit 1, exit 2, exit 3, exit 4. You are not looking or thinking about pedestrians. This is just a reality of safety. There's a reason why you don't put a roundabout in a crowded area like this. Our friends from the county came here and told us to take a look at Orland Park. Orland Park is a roundabout at a dead end in front of a large municipal building with a huge parking lot. They're trying to slow traffic down at a dead end to get you into a parking lot. That's maybe a decent place for a roundabout. In the town of Elgin, they've removed a roundabout because it caused so many accidents. Neighbors were sitting out on their stoops just watching it. It was entertainment, it was dangerous. And they have plans to remove another roundabout. So the roundabout, and again, I don't question anyone's intentions, anyone's vision, but right now in Northfield in 2024, with everything we know, it is a bad idea, it's an unsafe idea, and if we have to spend some money to avoid a train wreck, then let's do it. This is, and I personally think, as board members, we have residents who have worked hard, they've lost sleep. I have heard and felt the stress of our people. Why are we continuing to put them through this? So I would like this board tonight, because I hear the reason why this is moving forward is the board supports the project. I would like to know if the board supports the project, the roundabout. Every board member here, do you support the roundabout, yes or no? I'm a no.
So I'm going to start, before I got on this board, I sat in on a couple of meetings down at the North Shore Senior Center when they were doing the study and the strategic planning. And one thing that sticks out in my head was the piece of the puzzle with the most Post-it notes was the roundabout. No roundabout. As I have sat on this board, I have learned more about the roundabout in the last 6 months than I have learned in my entire tenure on this board. I think that the businesses and I think that the residents were bamboozled. I talked with business owners who have been long-standing business owners who aren't here tonight, but never were asked to be a part of the strategic plan. I don't think any resident was asked to be part of the strategic plan. I think that really what summed it up was this weekend my son was home from Iowa, and he asked, what's going on with the village? And I said, I don't even know where to begin. I said, but man, one of the big things is this roundabout that they want to put in right in the middle of town. And he said, Dad, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And I said, well, he said, that should be going at Hap and Winnetka Avenue to ease the traffic at that intersection. That's not an option, but my point is I'm struggling with how little information as a board member I was given until recently. And I think that the information that has been shared with the effects, and I support our businesses, and they've been through the roller coaster with COVID and with the Willow Road. And I think that, you know, we really need to take a hard look at this as a board. And I, right now, currently will say that I am a completely hard no to this entire project.
I completely echo the sentiments of Trustee Whitaker and Trustee Barnaby Dinges. I have lived here for 65 years. I spent 10 years on the fire department with Chief Nystrand. In the last 5 years, there have been 0 injuries at that intersection. Nobody's been hit. Nobody's been injured on a bicycle. And in that last 5 years, there's been, I think, 11 minor vehicle accidents without any injuries at that intersection. When you try to get across, one of my biggest fears is I live on the east side of town, and when you come from Mariano's and you cross over the road and you want to go south on Walnut, if there's a roundabout and the roundabout backs up because Hap Road backs up way past where it crosses the intersection of Orchard Lane, the roundabout's going to be filled with cars. You cannot be able to get off or over from Orchard to Walnut to go back to the east side and vice versa. Right now, when it backs up, people are courteous enough in this town to leave that space to where you can cross. If there's a roundabout, it'll be filled with vehicles. What Trustee Dinges said is absolutely true about the crossing points. All the research that he's done, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on here that are totally false. There's going to be more points that pedestrians are going to be unsafe. We have more and more younger kids trying to navigate on bikes and walking, and younger kids are allowed to ride their bikes. I have a grandchild who's 9, another one who's 6, and another one who's 3, and they're allowed to ride their bikes, and younger people are around. There's women with babies that are trying to cross. It's ridiculous. It's unnecessary, and unfortunately, if we have to lose some money based on what we've already spent, there's no good reason to put good money after bad money to create this problem. We talked about, you know, I've done tons of research, as the other trustees have as well, but when you look at Suicide Circle, the one in Des Plaines, and there's 20+ accidents a year, there's injuries involving there, this does not make any sense. When they're trying to sell this as safety, there's no safety issue here that's going to be improved by this roundabout. It's going to make things worse. So as a longtime resident and as a responsible trustee, my job is to support the businesses, support the residents, which I've tried to do as a member of this board as a second term. I think this is ridiculous. I am adamantly opposed to it, and I will fight to the end to make sure that this does not happen, and I support all of you.
Anybody else?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of touch points coming up that are still important to making a decision on this project. There is a non-binding question on the ballot in 3 weeks that allows us to take the temperature of the community aside from the residents that continue to show up month after month, which I appreciate that everyone is doing. You know, when I went back and looked at some of the directives from the caucus, it tells us that we need to represent the majority of the residents of Northfield. And whether that's a popular opinion in this room or not, I do think that making a decision here tonight before we have the input from that referendum is really 3 weeks too early to make that kind of a decision. I would recommend right now that we plan a special meeting for immediately after the referendum so that we know where we've gotten to with the results of that referendum. So, you know, if you consider national statistics, they'll say that 50 to 60% of the electorate votes during a presidential election. So that, to me, feels better and gives us a piece of information that we haven't had to this point, because this was not an issue when the caucus did their last survey. You know, we have gotten comments from others in the community, either for or against. So that, I mean, that's where I stand at this moment, that I would like to continue down the path that we're on to get as much information from the community at large in totality as to where they stand on this issue. And if that turns out to be, you know, as you all would suggest, that it's going to be a landslide in the negative, then I think this board has legitimate facts to make a decision with. And while I am 100% sympathetic to the 3 trustees who have spoken to this point, I do believe that it is our fiscal responsibility to understand what the dollar amount will be if we break this agreement, because then we are going to have to come to you or to the next set of trustees and say, let's just say it's 1.5 million, and I know that there's a disagreement over whether it's 1.5 or it's 500,000 or what the number is. But at the end of the day, some board, either this one or the next one, is going to be responsible for that $1.5 million potentially that has been spent. And I am not prepared tonight to pull the plug on this. What I am prepared to consider and ask Patrick to do more research on is, what does this road look like without a roundabout? I mean, that is one piece of information that we don't have. I would have to say that the attempt to reconfigure the roundabout at this moment with the new suggestion is I'm sorry.
You wanted to see what this looks like without the roundabout? You're 50 meters away from it.
I believe that Cook County has asked us to, is demanding may be too strong of a word, but wants to do surface repairs and construction on this road in some form or fashion. And their solution may not be what is directly outside of this room. But what I don't know is what Cook County's solution looks like without a roundabout. And and when I was interrupted, the point I was trying to make is that I'm not for the modification that you've suggested, Patrick. I appreciate the time and energy that you put into it. I do believe it's clunky. I feel like it's a lot for only 5 parking spots. So to be clear, I would like to suggest that we get the results of the referendum, that we call a special meeting for some time. You know, certification of this election will take some time, but I think that we could, you know, set aside the national scope and look at the results of the referendum and be able to work with those numbers before the election is certified. Ask you to go back to Cook County and say, what would this roadway look like without a roundabout? Because here's my concern. You know, this was first brought to our attention on August 13th. We had a meeting on September 11th to give you as much information as we could. We've had this meeting now on October 15th. We don't meet again until early December, and then we don't meet again until the 3rd week in January. So you're still going to be 6 or more weeks, my math is even wrong, how many ever weeks that is, 8 weeks, sort of out there wondering what our decision is going to be. So I would like to see us wait for the referendum results, try to get some information from Cook County, no roundabout, and, you know, to the extent we can, nail down what the ramifications of that are, and call a special meeting in November to do nothing but talk about this, and then have the up or down vote if that's where we get to. That's where I am today.
Thank you, Tracy. I think I like the idea of having a meeting in November, see if we can find something on the calendar. It makes sense. We could get county back. I wouldn't mind seeing our commissioner, Scott Britton, here too, and talking about the ramifications of breaking an agreement with the county. Most of our main roads through Northfield are county roads. So we're gonna have to deal with, you know, Winnetka Avenue, Hap, Sunset Ridge, Wagner, Frontage Road, those are all county roads. And whether or not breaking an agreement with county is gonna have a long-term ramification for our relationship, which currently is a very positive one. But
Greg,
I'd like to have that discussion.
I do have to say, I am less concerned that Cook County is not going to service the roads in our community because that's their responsibility and they have a certain amount of liability for not doing so. I do believe that all relationships go through ups and downs, and maybe this is an up and a down, and with Patrick's guidance, we can repair said relationship if it's required, but I just think that we have to be free from the what is this going to do to our relationship conversation. I just think that this is too important, and from both perspectives, the people that don't want it and and those of us here that have the fiscal responsibility to not overspend and use taxpayers' dollars in a way that they disagree with.
Well, is Matt, or are you guys weighing in, or can I keep going?
Feel free to weigh in. I think what Tracy's suggesting is sensible, and I think we have to be sensible about this. I think we have to prepare the county. I still have major concerns if this did not go through. What's going to happen at Winnetka Avenue? What's going to happen with this road? We've got to tear it up to put in new water lines. Who's going to pay for that? What's the county going to say? So all those things I think we got to anticipate those, I guess, at the end of the day and try to be as prepared as possible. So Tracy, I agree with you, and I think that's a smart way to do it. And I think time for everyone to get all the information is better suited for us at this point.
Quick question for Chief Nystrand. Does the water main run directly underneath Hap Road, or is it closer to the shoulder of the road currently?
Closer to the shoulder.
So it wouldn't require like tearing up the entire middle of the road to replace the water main, which is 90 years old, that we probably need to do, right?
Yeah, but it's not the same distance from the edge of the pavement as it moves north or south or either end.
Thank you. And also, one other thing is I know that the caucus in their survey did ask the question about the roundabout, and there was a pretty good response that it was negative about the roundabout in the caucus survey.
Matt, do you have anything?
Yeah, last but not least, I have serious concerns about the process that this went through for the past number of years, but I would like to wait for the results of the referendum myself. I think it is a big piece of the puzzle, and if a special meeting right afterwards is agreeable for everyone, I think that makes a ton of sense, and then we'll have a real good idea about how the community feels about it.
Great, thanks.
Before we put anything on the calendar, I don't support a special meeting in November on this topic for a couple of reasons. One, we do have an election on November 5th. People are going to need some time to absorb what happens no matter what. Believe it or not, the roundabout in Northfield is not the biggest thing in the world. I know it feels like it, but a lot of people are going to have a lot of stuff on their minds going on, and I think we should be respectful of that. I've talked to people all over town for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, supporters, opponents, and I guess what I'm prepared to say now, I'm going to make the bold statement, tens of people support the roundabout, hundreds of people oppose it. We know what we're going to find out on November 5th. So we're waiting for an obvious result. We're kicking the can down the road, and I think we owe it to our residents who have blood, sweat, tears. I represent the people in this room who have put in the work, have come out, and I have heard you loud and clear. I see you. You're here. You've been here. You'll come back. You'll do more stuff. You got a meeting tomorrow night. You're not going to stop. And so with me, this is not an intimidation. This is, I honor what you've done. I respect what you've done. You've been persuasive. I'm persuaded. It's okay as representatives. We represent. I have heard enough. I know enough. You know, at this point, we're trying to rebuild trust with our residents. We rebuild trust with our residents by listening to them and acting upon what they've told us they want and need. I don't think we build trust by delaying and postponing the obvious. And again, I have 5 pages of stuff here that I'm prepared to talk about tonight about what was wrong with the process. So what I want is, let's go back and do a proper phase 1 that includes some of the people who live on Hap Road and are affected, the businesses. But right now, we've heard from Three Tarts, we've heard from Lori's, we've heard from Hap Inn, we've heard from Metamorphosis, we've heard from Peachtree. They have said this project will hurt them and cost them a lot of money. Some of them have said they might go out of business. We've heard from the attorney for Friedman Properties that if those businesses go out of business, they're going to be hard to replace. So that's a financial ripple effect. It's not just money to the county or money that, or the city or the village. It's not just our finances that matter. It's the finances of the residents we represent. And so I just think it's foolhardy and emotionally doesn't feel right at this moment to say, yeah, let's come back in November after the referendum. I think we owe it to the residents right now to tell them, do you support a roundabout, yes or no? I think that's a pretty easy thing at this point after all that we've been through to do. So I don't support. What I want is Patrick to go talk to the county and say, can we get a look at a project without a roundabout? And all the engineering and all the designs, projects change all the time, change orders. I worked on the Soldier Field project, the adaptive reuse of that, and I know a lot of people hate the design, but believe it or not, during that project, we changed 20 things, $30 million. They didn't like the tinting. Projects encounter this all the time. This is not some only in Northfield thing. And what you do when you're in a project and you find that you have a problem or something doesn't work, you take the step you need to take. And I think that's what you're asking for, and I think that's what we need to do. So I would like Patrick to go to the county and say, can we look at a design without a roundabout and all this engineering work? Let's restart the process, and we could do a warp speed phase 1 with the right people. We've already got the information. We could get this done in a matter of weeks, a proper phase 1, and then move forward with the project. So I don't see why we're delaying the inevitable.
Hey, Barnaby, I'm not sure we're really disagreeing on the request, but what I don't have information is what is this going to cost? If we go back to phase 1 of anything, someone's going to have to pay for that. I mean, it's not going to be free.
Well, there
Maybe
might be
can-
lost costs, but there also might be costs that we can use. There's a lot of engineering work that can be used.
Correct.
There's a lot. So this idea that it's all, you know, money in the, you know, so again, I just I don't like the thought of planning now for a November meeting to give. What I'd like is when Patrick gets the feedback on some of these issues, we can get together, and quite honestly, there's a reason why we don't meet in November. I think this community needs a break. And I'm not sure folks want or need to come back in November to talk about this.
But if we don't meet in November to discuss it, I mean, procedurally, we're in committee of the whole still, even though it's 7:30 now. And aside from directing Patrick to do something, this is going to have to come back to the full board for a vote. Am I wrong, Patrick? I mean, we can't just break an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement, in the committee of the whole. So yes, no? Like, am I going down the right path? Because that puts us to December before we can make a legitimate, have a motion and a second to vote on something. If we have a special meeting in November and we're compelled to take some vote then, it's a published meeting, it's a board meeting, and then we can actually take a vote. So I'll ask our legal team or you, Patrick, to weigh in on that and correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure, you can only take formal action that's been posted on your agenda properly. There's nothing on the agenda that would indicate formal actions happening this evening.
And there's a reason, like Barnaby said, we don't meet in November, and we do need a break, and then that'll also give us the election results of the referendum. We meet that first week, that first Tuesday in December, so we meet 2 weeks early in December. So give us that break in November. We'll get the results from the election, and the referendum will be on that. And then in December, I mean, this has already been in the works for years, and obviously there's been a lot that's gone on for years, and there's quite a few people that have not known anything about this for years. So I think what we really need to do is wait till after the election. We can meet in our December meeting. We can put it on the agenda. We can also have time that you can discuss options with Cook County and have them be given time, especially with the holidays. A lot of this stuff gets jammed up or put off by them. So it'll give everyone time to look at what we're doing, give you time to get some ideas, give us an idea of what the referendum says, and we can meet in December again and get a better direction of what the community thinks about this entire project. And I don't see spending good Monday after bad if we're going to work on this. So I think it's a good idea to slow it down, to stop it, to revisit it, and to start over. Because a lot of the people that were here back at that time are no longer here and no longer involved. So, you know, things happen, people make mistakes. We look at stuff and we need to revisit it and do a proper revision of this project.
Well, I'm just going to say one more thing really quick. Obviously, like you said, we can't take action, so me saying no doesn't help. My recommendation is, obviously, you know, I'm opposed to the project as it is, 100%. My recommendation would be, like you said, is go back and do the project without the roundabout.
So, you know, we got to get moving to the next meeting, but. Oh, Carol, you got to approach the podium if you're going to talk.
Carol Ritchell, 811 Hap. I'm really concerned when I repeatedly hear you speak of reliance upon the referendum. Number one, not everybody votes in the election. Number two, Have you all seen a sample, seen the ballot? It is not listed as a referendum. It is listed on side 2, the very top of the page, as public opinion. I have a friend who happens to be a nuclear engineer. This person said, and okay, on the front page is all the, the regular whatever. And actually, somebody had said to me, Carol, it's with the judges. Okay, I relayed this information to this nuclear engineer friend, whereupon this person said, oh, I never vote for the judges anyway. So one of the things I'm trying to bring up, if you're relying upon the results of the referendum, I really question the reliability of any reliance upon that. Thank you.
Kim Morris, 1655 Orchard Lane. Barnaby, thank you so much for the history on this whole project. That was really helpful. I just wanted to address Tracy for a minute. This room, although it may not represent all of Northfield, represents all the business owners who have been here meeting after meeting. And to me, yeah, I mean, as a resident, I have a vested interest in this roundabout. It's not going to take money out of my pocket if this roundabout happens. But everyone has been here from all these businesses, and I think it's beyond remiss to ignore the fact that these business owners have been here meeting after meeting, and if you haven't read this room, that's horrifying to me. They are the referendum. They're the ones that are going to lose money. So to wait for the referendum, the vote, whatever, in November, the residents care, but these are the people that you're violating by putting this roundabout in place. And then I just want to add, it's really rich. I sat here in the fountain meeting where we were going to decorate the roundabout, and it's really rich that some of you on this board were willing to spend over $1 million to put a fountain in. And now you're crying that the county is going to take some money back from us.
We have consensus on the board for a special meeting.
I'm sorry. I need to address that comment. I never, at any point in this conversation, said I thought that the businesses didn't have concerns. I actually asked Patrick to consider the project without a roundabout, which is what the businesses have been asking for. So I just want to get on the record that that is what I just said. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Kathy Estabrook, 1620 Mount Pleasant. You have a whole room full of people here who are against the roundabout. Where's the room full of people who are for it?
We have a consensus on the board for a special meeting. Charlie is not here right now, so it's...
Don Graff, I'll be brief. Way back last February, we had a meeting here. I recorded it, put together the original roundabout rant on VHS and on YouTube and all that. Back then, very few people even knew about a roundabout. Now many people do. Everything that I heard and everything that I said that night, nothing has changed my opinion except leave it alone. And one more thing. When we talked to the lady from Cook County, I asked her, what happens if we do nothing and leave it alone? She repeatedly said, depends. I want to hear depends on what. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, there will be more discussion on this. This is the committee of the whole. There won't be a vote on anything, but we need to get to our regular business board meeting, which will start in about 5 minutes. Can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.